Well, Bronwin, it is so nice to speak with you today. Thank you for talking with me and the CCMA about Pride Month. It is super exciting that the CCMA is shining a light on the queer community that exists within the Canadian country music scene. And you are a part of that community. So thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me today.
Oh, thanks very much so much for interviewing me, Stephen. This is awesome. I'm so thrilled to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's super exciting that we are doing this. And, I've met you in passing. I worked in
Well,
country
there you
music for
go.
about 12 years, but I don't think we've ever had a conversation before. I'm queer, you're queer. We love having queers in country
Right?
music.
It's
Yes,
amazing.
it is amazing. You've been in the industry of design and marketing for almost 20 years, which is incredible.
I know,
You are
right?
the founder and creative director of Feisty Creative. That is amazing. Congrats on that. I'm always curious when somebody has so much success. Was this always your goal and plan? Like, did you know this was what you were going to go into?
Not always. I was like a full-on rodeo cowboy before I realized that, speaking of industries that are limiting for gay people and women. So I don't know, I just always had this love for music, and so, I literally country song, like, packed up my pickup from Alberta, and I wanted to put myself in the heart of Canadian country music, and that was my goal. And I just sort of, I thought I was gonna be an artist manager, and then I found out that was, like, not my bag. Like, hats
Why
off
was that?
to
Why was that not your bag though? What made you discover that?
oh, I don't know. I have this like three strikes rule. And so I tried like I went to school for recording arts management and I tried it out and it just really wasn't a good fit. And it wasn't necessarily for any fault of my own or the artists I was working with. It just really didn't gel. And I
Mhm.
felt for me like when you try something, give it your whole heart and put yourself into it and you like just fail like three
Yeah.
times in a row for me, I'm like, you know what? That's not it. And then the more I learned about other things, like getting into design, like I used to design my mixtapes and my mix CDs and all that kind of stuff. And then I realized, like, when I was in school, that, like, damn, like, of course, there are people that design the actual CDs I'm
Yeah.
buying. So I got a job at a studio, and then the rest is history. I started
That
Feisty and like never looked back.
That's incredible. You have been doing it for so long and you have worked with so many incredible artists. Like I was looking at the lists that you have worked with and it's amazing. Do you have a favorite project or artist? I know it can be like picking a baby sometimes, like a child who's your favorite, but is there one that stands out to you that you're just like, "Damn, that was good."
Okay, well, there are a few, and you are totally making me pick a favorite child, which could get me in trouble. But like I'd say overall, one of them would have to be Kinney Starr's Feed the Fire album. Like that album and that album cycle, like I've been a fan of Kinney's for years. And when I was asked to be a part of the project, like I was blown away. And Kinney and I, like we dug really deep on that and the imagery and everything that came about from it. Like that was absolutely my favorite. But I'd say for if we're gonna go country,
Yeah.
like I would say like actually I just did the Everbound record for Washboard Union and I love the shit out of that package. Like
Yeah, it's
it
super
was
cool.
definitely those boys really let me go to the wall on that. And with the also the help from Emily in Nashville, the photographer who did an excellent job on the ground, creative directing that whole shoot, gave me some incredible visuals to work with. So between Emily and me and the boys, like I think that package just came together. And yeah, I have to say it's probably like pray for my client base later. Like yeah, I'd have to say those might be my favorite boys of the moment,
Yeah.
but there have been others.
Yeah, there's been some incredible projects that you've worked on, and congrats
Thanks.
again on that. Listen, since we're talking Pride today, we're gonna
Mhm.
get a little bit personal. I want to know a
Okay.
little bit more about your backstory.
Okay.
So tell me, when did you first realize that you were queer, and was that something that you accepted right away, or did it take some time for you?
Oh man, like I grew up in Alberta, so it was not like my family's really cool, but like Alberta's not. And like being in the ranching cowboy kind of industry like made it really tough for me to figure it out. But like for real, I've been a tomboy my whole life. Like you know, my parents famously tell the story of how, like, after my 4th birthday, I did not wear a dress. Like, I pitched such fits when people would try and put me in a dress that, like, you know, all the pictures from like 4 on are of me. I had little, like, you know, kitty suit and tie, and it would totally
Oh,
screw up the Sears photographer and stuff. So I'm pretty sure, like, even though I didn't know it, I'm pretty sure everybody else knew. They're like, oh yeah, she's gonna be a big old gay.
yeah.
But like for me, I'd say I was like 12. Like, you know, it was like the movie Switch, actually. It was like a
Oh,
stupid movie. It does not survive time well, but like I watched that movie, and that was one of the first sort of like situations where I saw like a group of women. Like there's a scene where they're at this like lesbian event, and I'm like, oh my god, like this is a thing. It's not just like one lesbian on her own. You know, you see that a lot, like in like a
yeah.
world of straight people. Like, and so I like saw like there's like a community, and I'm like, oh, that could be a thing. So, and then just like, you know, you mature over your teenage years and just sort of figure yourself out. But yeah, I was lucky. I came to terms with it pretty quick, and I'm stubborn enough to just sort of like no, this is it. Like no messing about. I'm not
I
a
love
gold
that.
star, but still, like I still the gays will get that. But still, I think you know, I know other people that, you know, they feel bad because they came out later, and I'm like, no,
Yeah,
like everybody comes to their own decisions at their own pace, and your environment can play a big role in that. Like,
100%.
and you know, so I don't like just because some people come out like, you know, I envy those who can be out in high school now.
Yeah.
And I see like whenever I see the baby gays in their prom photos, Steven, I have to get a box of Kleenex. I'm just like, I would have died to have been able to take my partner
Same.
to prom.
100%. And I think what I love seeing, and you just hit on it there, is, you know, when I was growing up, I didn't have people owning their queerness at
Mhm.
such a young age. So you're absolutely right. When I see, you know, an 8-year-old who is saying, I'm trans, or it just
Right. Yes.
really makes me feel so good inside, because that means there's progress happening. You know what I mean? There's more representation out there for people to
Hmm.
realize, you know, who they are, and that they can be accepted for who they are.
Hmm.
For your coming out journey, everybody's coming out is different. You kind of
Oh
mentioned
yeah.
that before. Everybody has their own
Mhm.
different path to coming out. What was your coming out like? Did you have to go to your parents, or sometimes it's just an understanding, you know, like they know, you know? Or was it a big kind of coming out story for you?
Not really. Like, to be totally honest, I came up to my mom in a fight in the car. Like,
Well,
we were
I'm gay,
driving home.
mom.
When we came home, she was trying to have like a birds and the bees talk with me. And I was
Oh,
like, for real, you have nothing to worry about. And she's like, well, what are you, gay or something? I said, as a matter of fact. And yeah, it was like we came out in a fight. And then I'm pretty sure my mom told my dad, because I don't think I ever actually had that conversation. But the benefit is like my family is super gay. There are lots of gays, so I wasn't even the first. So it made it so much easier because I had my uncle Robert, and then like when I came out, and then my cousin Wesley came out. So it's just like we're just like so full of gays. Like if they kicked us out, like half the family would be gone. So, and it would be such a boring family. But
yes.
uh but so I was very, very fortunate that my family was very accepting. My friends in high school were very accepting to a point, you know, like they didn't care that I was gay and they supported me, and you know, but like they wouldn't go to the gay bar with me,
Yeah.
you know. So I love seeing them now, like loving up on RuPaul's Drag Race,
There you go.
and I'm like, well, I'm glad you're excited about it now because you certainly weren't too excited about it when we were friends. But
They're like, when can we go to the gay bar?
yeah, and I'm like, never. You lost that chance. Also, I'm like 40 now. I don't even go to the gay bar. I don't even.
You
So
still should. You still should.
yeah. But I mean, to be honest, like that's like, you know, in my city life, but like when I was out at the farm, like it was super closeted. Like, yeah, I
Yeah.
was gay, but the bonus was is I was in Alberta. So like there's this sort of thing. It's like, is it Alberta or lesbian? You don't know.
Yeah.
But that's actually the danger of being a queer woman in Alberta, is that some women you would be like, she's totally gay. No, she's not.
Yeah.
And it can end in like violence.
Yeah.
like all seriousness. And so when I was out at the farm, like I actually strategized to hit on guys that I knew had girlfriends so that I knew they would turn me down. And I knew they had big mouths that they would tell everybody like, oh, Bronwin hit on me and asked me out. Can you believe it? Whatever. But then all of a sudden all the gay rumors went away. You know what I mean? So all of a
You
sudden like
did
that
what you had to
risk,
do.
you gotta do what you gotta do to survive. And now the
Yeah.
secret's out. And but anyway,
The secret is out, baby. The
I
secret
know
is
it's been
out.
out for 26 years.
I
So we're
love
good.
that. I love
Yeah.
that. Your pronouns are they, them, and their. Now, I know a lot of people struggle with pronouns. So, first of all, how do you identify? Can you explain to anyone who watching how you identify?
Yeah, I identify as non-binary, and that is because I don't really feel like I fit either gender. You know, like yes, I was born female, but I don't really identify as a woman, and I don't really identify as a man either. Like
Yeah.
I just don't feel like I fit either, and I believe that like it's taken me a long time. Like I came out at 14, but like I only came out as non-binary like a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And it was mainly because I was trying to work through who I was and figure out who I am. And I realized like it doesn't matter. Like I was like, oh, like where do I fit on this? I'm like, I don't need to fit
Yeah.
in either. Like I am just not either. And so you know, it's a little challenging, you know, when you talk to family about it, because they're like, well, are you my sister? Or like, how does that work? I'm like, well, sibling seems really clinical. So, you know, you're not, I'm still your sister.
Yeah.
You know, like there's some of those pronouns, some of those sort of like gendered, familial sort of things are hard to sort of break from because they're
Yeah.
very gendered. But you know, when it comes to like how I live my life, I do feel like I've all kind of always been non-binary. And I feel like if I had known that that was something one could be, I
Mhm.
probably would have identified as non-binary from 4 years old. Like
Yeah.
way back when I threw a temper tantrum over somebody trying to put me in a dress, I
Yeah.
probably would have identified as non-binary back then. And so for me, it was more of a sense of just coming to terms with like who I am. And I've always believed that like sexuality and gender are fluid, and we and like fluid takes the shape of the container that it's in, and we are all unique containers. And so your sexuality and your gender is unique to your container, whatever that may be. And
Yeah.
so, you know, just because like society says, I don't know, I feel like us in the community, it's like just because society says something don't mean nothing, is sort of how
Nobody
I
has
feel
to be
about it.
put in a box. That's the thing. Like it
No.
is 2021 and nobody has to be a he or she. Like that does
Yeah.
not exist anymore. You know what I mean?
Well, it's kind of unnecessary in
Yeah.
some cases, and I do feel that there needs to be like in some ways like you know, obviously I believe in gender representation and like equality in that sense, and we need to strive
Of
for
course.
more of that, obviously. But at the same time, I feel like there are these rigid gender norms and
Hmm.
sexuality and the heteronormativity and all this other kind of stuff. It's like
Yeah.
I don't understand why somebody else's like sexual identity or gender or et cetera, is like, how does that affect your life?
It
It actually
doesn't.
has a much greater effect on my life for someone to try and force me or you
Yeah.
into a box that we
Yeah.
don't fit.
Um,
So
do you find now, like, I know some people get upset with the pronouns. I
mhm,
kind of feel like it's a bit, I mean, again, I identify as a he, him.
mhm.
But do you get upset if somebody uses the incorrect pronouns for you, or do you consider that kind of like an almost teachable moment?
Yeah, I don't get upset, especially because like in some cases, like you know, my mom and stuff like that, and my brothers, like they've had 40 years with me to like as I didn't, you know, identifying as she, or even just I just hadn't told them. So I, you know, I don't necessarily get bent out of shape. I do like I might find a like quiet way later. Like I won't do it in front of people and be like, "Excuse me,"
Yeah.
but it might be something where later I'd be like, well, look, you know, I'd really prefer if you would use they them, you
Yeah.
know. And it also depends on if somebody does it in like a hurtful way.
Mhm.
Like, you know, like if
Yeah.
somebody, if you can kind of tell that somebody is intentionally
Yeah.
not using the proper pronouns because and it comes from almost like a mean spirited
Yeah.
sort of way, then that that is a time where it will be the lesson will be taught, the tea will be spilled,
It is
and
not just a teachable moment anymore. If you're using it on purpose,
no, honey, this,
there's going to be some problems there.
yeah, harsh words will be spoken. So yeah, I think that, like, I don't get too bent out of shape because I think everybody is kind of figuring it out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you're never going to get acceptance or you know, from the greater, like, people who don't know. Like, my mother has never even heard of what a non-binary is,
Yeah.
let alone, like, you know, I was, it was in the process of explaining what cis was
Yeah.
um to her, that I was like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm non-binary. This time the coming out was not nearly as like fraught in anger, so that was a
Yeah.
nice change. um but yeah, like, I think it's just, you know, getting the general population sort of used to the idea that, like, no, this is a thing, like, and this
Yeah.
is, you know, just as you learn how to use a smartphone, we're going to learn how to do this.
Yeah.
And I think over time it'll start to sort of become part of the natural vernacular, and I
It
think,
will.
you know, and those who don't like the idea of change, well, we can take solace in the fact we know they will die eventually, so
Well, listen, since we're talking CCMA and Pride,
mhm,
what was your relationship growing up with country music? Obviously, being in Alberta,
yeah,
it was around you, probably growing
yeah,
up very heavily, right?
yeah, yeah, and like being on ranches and everything, like country was the life. Like, I
Yeah.
literally lived the life. And I have to say, like, I have to say my relationship with country music has been both like incredible and hurtful at the
Mhm.
same time. Like, it is the experience of, you know, I have loved country music most of my life,
Yeah.
even though country music hasn't always loved me. And it's hard to explain sometimes, like, I'm getting emotional. Um because, like, when you really like an artist and you're like, "Oh, I love this track," and you own their records, and then, like, you can't even understand, like, the heartbreak you feel when that artist, like, turns around in an interview or something, or makes a statement that basically tells you that you're an abomination, or
Yeah.
that you're, like, horrible, or, like, you're disgusting, or, like, that breaks your heart.
Definitely.
And then also, like, and I didn't even necessarily think about it until I was older and got more perspective and that type of thing, but, like, and then you have, like, the other artists who don't come to your defense, you know, and they just sort of stay silent, and so, like, you know,
Yeah.
when you remain silent, you know, you're part of the problem at
Hmm.
that point. And
Absolutely.
so it's been very challenging, and it's kind of funny because, like, I think it was my wife actually that said to me when we first got together, she's like, "I don't understand," because, like, I'm straight edge. I've been sober now 12 years, and she's like, "I don't understand how a sober, queer, non-binary person loves country music so much when it's like the opposite of who you are." I'm like, "Well, it wasn't for a long time." And
Yeah.
for me, it's the narratives, right? Like, when I grew up on country music, it wasn't all about drinking and tank tops and flip
Yeah.
flops. Like, yeah, sure, like, there was the occasional like summer drinking party song, but, like, for
Chattahoochee.
real, like,
Yeah.
think about it, right? Like, in the 90s, we had, like, you know, like, we had like Terry Clark, When Boy Meets Girl, and Better Things to Do, and
Yeah.
Shania, like, you know, everything from If You're Not In It For Love, I'm Out of Here, and like, and Faith Hill, like, and I mean, obviously, I was a big fan of the ladies because the ladies
Yeah.
dominated in the 90s. But
That
even the
was an
guys,
era. That was an
even the
era.
right, but even the guys, like, think of like George Strait, Alan
Yeah.
Jackson, Garth Brooks, like, Garth Brooks' biggest hits, like Forgiving, like even Friends in Low Places, while it's sort of a bit of a drinking song, isn't entirely a drinking song.
Yeah.
But now it's like it's very different. It's like I don't know if that's just says something about the lack of imagination in some of these songwriters' rooms. And yes, I said it. Like because like seriously, like how many songs can we have? I also think it's hilarious how like everybody sings about whiskey now, and I'm just like, okay, and next year it'll be beer and long
Yeah.
necks or whatever. But anyway, I think like the country music I fell in love with, and even the country music I continue to listen to, like Lucinda Williams, Roseanne Cash, like Lindy Ortega,
Oh,
like
love Lindy
Jamie
so
Wyatt,
much. Yeah.
you know, like Brandy Clark. I am fucking
Yeah.
obsessed with Brandy Clark right now. And obviously like Brandy Carlisle.
There you go.
But like they sing like songs to tell stories. Like
Yeah.
it's not just music to drink to, which is kind of what's like on radio, I guess.
Well, it's funny because, like I mentioned, I worked in country music for 12 years and I did not grow up knowing the genre at all. Like, it was not in my wheelhouse.
Right.
And I'd always get people saying, like, well, I know you work in country music, but do you actually like country music? And obviously, there wasn't a lot of representation within country music.
Right.
But at the end of the day, yes, my answer would always be yes, I do like country music, but it's like any genre. There's
Yeah.
some stuff you won't like, and
Yeah.
there's some real amazing, incredible songs out there. Do you feel like working in the Canadian country music scene, you've ever faced any type of discrimination within the industry?
I don't know, not to my face.
Yeah.
Not to my face. Um, and I mean, I'm very lucky because I am like behind the scenes, right? I
Mhm.
run creative services, so like I'm not in front of the camera. So I think I'm very lucky. I think it's like a two-tiered system. Like if you're behind the camera, it's a much more tolerated
Yeah.
to be queer. But in front of the camera, like the rules change.
Oh, yeah.
And and so I don't like I've always, even from my very first studio job that I got, and I was going to my very first country music week as a delegate. I told my boss, I said, heads up, I am not going back in the closet just because we're going to
Yeah.
country music week. Like we're going, I'm gonna be the big old gay in a hat. And if that's too much for you, well, then we need to have a bigger talk.
Yeah.
And luckily he was like, no, that's awesome. I think that's just gonna be great. So and I haven't looked back since. I've always just been
Yeah.
like the big lesbian in the room. And I mean, part of the reason I did that is because the closet is small and dark and lonely, and
Very.
I hate it there. I didn't
Yeah.
last very long there in the first place. So and I also like I've been through a lot, like growing up gay in Alberta, you take a lot of barbs. Like I have been met with some threats and some violence, and you know, you build a pretty thick skin and you learn how to defend yourself against that kind of thing. And I felt like I wanted to be a bit of a beacon for whether it be artists who are closeted or not, or other industry members or whatever. I wanted them to know, like, no, there are out gay people and we're here and we're not afraid.
Yeah.
And if you
I
need
mean,
anything, you know, I'm here.
yeah, I mean, listen, even us having this conversation with the CCMA is a step in the right direction.
Oh,
We
100%.
have artists, like you've mentioned some of them, but there's incredible queer country artists who are on the rise. We just had TJ Osborne of Brothers Osborne come out. Congrats to him. It always feels weird to say congratulations. I know some people are like, well, we shouldn't congratulate somebody for coming out, but in regards to country music, it's a big deal.
That's a big deal.
He's the only openly gay country artist signed to a major record label. So that is a big deal. And that is visibility for the community. You know, we have Trixie Mattel, a drag queen. And there's things coming out now, like, you know, the Calgary Stampede has a pride event, which is amazing. You know, do you think this is going to be kind of a trend that that will continue? Do you think we'll see more openly queer artists coming out of the closet, or even, making a splash within country music?
I really hope so.
Yeah.
I really, really do. And I know, and yeah, I know it seems weird to like congratulate somebody from coming out, but like it is for a country artist. I think people don't quite understand the sheer risk involved in that.
Mhm.
And it's not without precedent that they should be concerned,
Yeah.
right? Like Nashville is not a forgiving beast.
Yeah.
And they run based on sort of like the lowest common denominator of their base. And if it goes against the slightest bit of that and their
Yeah.
bottom line, then they're just not prepared to take that kind of a risk. And that's the saddest thing ever. Because I think by diversifying our audience in country music, anybody we lose, we're gonna gain like tenfold.
You're so
Because
smart when you say that. Yeah.
like, oh, so you lose a few rednecks, like they'll find their way into some
Yeah.
southern rock subgenre and they'll be fine. You're gonna gain so many people, like, whether they're queer or, they're black, indigenous,
Yeah.
brown, Hispanic, whatever. Like, there is such a wealth of talent out there that
Mhm.
is not singing about tank tops and flip flops and their latest bottle of whiskey. Like,
Yeah.
they're creating some incredible music. And like, it is so frustrating to see them get stonewalled at a certain point. I do believe that the tide is turning.
Me too.
I think that, with the successes of artists like Orville Peck, the
Yeah.
fact that he has, like, I love him so much.
Same.
There like are not words.
Yeah.
And his success is like, and basically to do that duet with Shania and Shania to do that video with him where she's basically like passing the torch.
Yeah.
Like, ladies and gentlemen, Orville Peck.
Orville Peck. Yeah.
Like, and I think this is a great step forward. And I think sort of it sort of reminds me, I heard that from it was like post CRS one year after Casey Musgraves like blew up,
Yeah.
there was like a group of radio guys and they're like, hey, did we miss the boat on Casey Musgraves? It's like, yeah, bitches, you missed
Yeah.
the boat. And like with Orville Peck, it's a similar thing. Like, this guy's blowing up. His
Yeah.
popularity actually is greater online than some of the biggest Canadian stars. Like,
100%.
and meanwhile, he can't get arrested up here outside of, like, at least on country radio and that type of thing. So
Yeah.
I think that with artists like him, sort of leading the charge and being so true to how fabulous he is,
Yeah.
like, and unapologetically fabulous, is incredible. And I do hope that that does pave a path that is less treacherous for other artists to come down behind him. And whether that means like he becomes one of those artists that is successful enough to sort of create a label and then, because
Yeah.
that can happen too, or whatever. Or even if he, when we tour again, he creates this big like queer festival or something of country. Like,
Ooh,
not
that
that
would
I'm
be
putting too much
incredible.
not that I'm putting too much on Orville, like, not to put everything on his
But
shoulders.
there's a lineup of people who he could bring and do a queer country festival. Like, that is a great idea. I think that would have a great turnout, and I think you should spearhead that up.
No, I make I make pretty pictures. I leave the festival promotion to the professionals. Like, I
Fair.
know my limitations. But like, no joke, I think that like there's just so much talent out there that has
Yeah.
been untapped. And I do hope that, especially with some like slightly less conventional gays out there like Orville, or even like Lily Rose down in the States, who's like
Yep.
kicking ass. And you've got the amazing Dorje, the Singing Shaman up here in Alberta,
Yes.
who is like, oh, she's just killing it. Like, I love seeing what's bubbling to the surface.
Yeah.
And I really do think like there's going to be like some kind of like gay renaissance here in
I love
country.
it.
That's I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just wishful thinking, but
I don't think it is. I think, like you said, the tide is turning. I think people down, in Nashville or even here are recognizing that there is an audience for, it doesn't have to be queer country music. It's just country music at the end of the day, but there is an audience
Yeah.
for queer artists on stage. Listen, like you mentioned, I worked in country, I mentioned before, for a very long time. I never faced any kind of discrimination. I worked with almost every Canadian country artist out there. And they were all incredible people. Country music really did feel like a family to me, and I loved that. What I do want to see is more Canadian country artists, putting their support behind something like Pride Month. There's little things that they can do that would mean so much to so many people around Canada. What do you think Canadian country artists could do just to put their support and their voice and their fan base behind the queer community?
Yeah, I mean, they have, obviously they have influence over their audience and stuff like that. And I also know that some of them are in precarious situations, like, with a lot of the female artists, like they don't have the benefit of the stability that a lot of the guys do, where the guys can kind of get away with a bit more, even though some of them are reluctant to. The girls, the industry has made it clear that if they step out of line too far, that, they'll get redlined to the midnight radio play, or they get shifted from labels, or, so on and so forth. So I understand that there is risk involved with stepping out and taking a stand. I do think it has to go beyond a rainbow square or a black square or a brown square. I think one way or another, you have to use your influence. It's sort of like you have to seek them out and bring queer artists on tour. You have to maybe on Pride Month, let them do an Instagram takeover, or do a whatever, do a fun, stupid, if we're ever allowed to meet again, do a fun, stupid promo stunt with them. Or, support a gay organization by doing some kind of press junket and volunteering at a queer organization near you. One that you believe in, one that's close to your heart, and that type of thing. So it's really, because anybody can put up a rainbow square, but what are you doing actually for the community? The gay community is very good at seeing through the veneer of the rainbow square. We've had people lying to us and putting us in danger our whole lives. That used to be a trick back in, when they were trying to trap the queer community. When the police, they would come in and they pose as gay people, and then as soon as you left the bar, you'd be arrested. So we're not looking for any false promises. If you support us, then you need to take some uncomfortable steps, and stand up. One of the great examples is American artist Cam is doing an incredible job being an ally for both the queer community and BIPOC community. So she will, she's used her platform at events, she's used her platform online, she's joined boards and committees and taken action within the industry. And I really applaud her for even having the humility to, tell her story about how, she made a mistake by telling her friend to come out, and saying it's no big deal, just come out. And then it turned out it was a big deal. And her friend got kicked out of her house and was basically homeless, and she's like, oh shit, I had no idea, who was I to say that? So I think her having the humility to see how, her actions and what she, and then turn around and turn this into what she's doing now, and the incredible work she's doing on behalf of many of the minority groups within the industry and beyond. She's really sort of reaching out. And I think that's sort of the important part. It's what are you actually doing in the community? I don't care if you just post a rainbow square. It might as well be another selfie as far as I'm concerned. You're just trying to grab whatever, join the hashtag conversation, but you're not really doing anything for the queer community, because then what's tomorrow? Tomorrow people are
Yeah.
still being, you know, discriminated against. You know, queer artists still can't get signed. Queer artists still can't get put on tours, you
Yeah.
know, for fear of like, oh, well, what if the festival audience doesn't like them, and or whatever. Like,
And half the time, if you put a singer on stage, like an audience wouldn't immediately look at most country performers and say, "Oh, that's a queer person. I don't like them." You know what I mean? Like
I'm
that's not the
pretty
need.
sure if you put Orville Peck on stage, you'd be like, oh yeah, he's
Okay,
gay.
so some.
So he's
um,
the exception that proves the rule.
yes, exactly. You are a part of CCMA history. You redesigned the award statue.
Oh my
That
God,
is
I know, right?
incredible. That's
Oh my
super
God.
cool. How does it make you feel to know that you are a part of history for the Canadian Country Music Awards? Like, it's incredible.
It was a big freaking deal. Like, I grew up watching the award show. Like, no joke. Like, I would be home, I would be like tuned in, my hat on, watching Terry get up there, win the award, and Shania and like Carolyn, like, bruh. And then, you know, the guys too. And so no, I love Paul Brandt, man. He's my Alberta brother. But then to be asked to redesign the trophy was like, speaking of projects that like really, wow, like I don't even
Yeah,
know the words to describe that really. Like it was a big fucking deal. Like
yeah,
I couldn't, yeah, I had to take a moment. Like
yeah.
there was definitely like, while I was like sketching on ideas, like I can't even believe I'm doing this, you know, like that I've been tasked with it. And so like I put a lot of pressure on myself.
Of course.
So but you know, I am, and then to see it like in real life, like, and to see the reactions of the artists when they were handed the new trophy for the first time, and they're like, holy shit. And
Yeah.
I remember Washboard came up to me and they're like, I didn't even realize the trophy needed to be redesigned until we held this. And they're like, this is incredible. And I was just like, oh man, like I I love it. And it will forever, like as part of my career, be like one of those things that I
Yeah.
will never forget. And I have to thank the President Tracy Martin for that honor, and her vision there. Like I think like we created something epic. So iconic.
And the fact is, something that I love, just talking about like Pride Month, we have a queer person who designed this award statue that is in so many of these
I
country
know,
stars' homes. So like there's a
right?
little queerness in their
Oh
homes there.
yeah, that's a little bit of gay in there.
Just a little
Heck of
dash
me.
of gay in there. You've been out and proud and loud for something like 26 years. That's a
Yeah,
long time.
that's a
What
long fucking
does
time.
That's a long time. What does pride mean to you? Like that's a vague question, but it's a
Yeah.
question that I love to ask. So what does pride mean to you?
Oh man, like I think it means it's like self-acceptance, and um and really figuring out sort of who you are as a person. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about being part of the queer community is we've all, you know, most of us are basically gay from birth. Like let's be real, it's probably genetic. I'm probably going to get all kinds of tweets and hate mail about that, but whatever. I don't know, my family has enough gays that I'm pretty sure it's genetic. So but more of the point is that like I think we've had to push against what we're told we have to be, or
Yeah,
you know, it's basically like assumed straight and cisgendered until proven otherwise,
yeah,
right? And um and so I think it's sort of like a journey of self-discovery in a sense, and like really being like, no, like this is who I am, and I am not ashamed, and you
yeah,
cannot shame me for who I am,
yeah,
because like it's really more of like that's on you. Like if you're gonna hate on me for who I am, then that's on you. Like
yeah,
as much as I do not like getting, you know, hurtful comments, and I don't like that. Like nobody likes being having that hurled at you, but like I've had it hurled at me for 26 years. I've had
yeah,
I mean shit, dude, we've had our existence debated in parliament,
yeah,
right? Like our right to exist, you know. And you know, friends of mine like, I remember when my wife and I decided to get married, and friends like, oh, what are you doing for your wedding? I'm like, it's super basic. And they're like, oh, you didn't plan a big wedding? I'm like, no, because for most of my life I wasn't legally allowed to.
Yeah.
So why would I bother planning a wedding for something I wasn't legally allowed to do?
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that, yeah, like pride is just like, no, this is who we are, and here we go. Like, you can't hurt me anymore. I
Yeah.
am unchained and unburdened by your shackles.
Yeah. You have had such a successful career. Do you feel in any way that maybe being queer has helped your success? Like, I feel like, you may have a different point of view on many things than other people. Do you feel like your queerness has really made you, in a way, a little more successful?
I don't know. I mean, maybe in the sense that I'm a bit I'm not less I'm less likely to sort of take something at face value for like, oh, this is the way it is. It's like, well, does it have to be?
Yeah.
Like, it's sort of maybe it like, I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, obviously, like I've been, in country a lot, so I can't really say, oh yeah, being gay in country has totally helped me out.
Yeah.
But I think that the fact that I'm, prepared to question, like, well, maybe there's a different way we can go about this and really make a splash,
Yeah.
right? And do something really different. And that sort of like resourceful nature, and sort of finding my own way has sort of helped me in my art to just kind of like find my own way, um, through the trends, through
Yeah.
what's happening, what's not happening, and all that kind of stuff. So maybe a little in my
Yeah.
artwork and stuff. So yeah, maybe.
What advice would you give to anyone who is right now, feeling unsure of who they are, if they should come out, if they're worried that, saying they're queer will be a career killer? Like, what advice would you give to those people out there?
Well, um, it's really tough because everybody's situation is their own, and I cannot, much like the cam example, like I cannot speak to what your home life is like,
Hmm.
what your current employment situation is like, because depending on where
Yeah.
you are and where you live, like you may or may not be protected.
Yeah.
Like that's a reality, and especially for our trans brothers and sisters. And so like you need to sort of factor that in, like your own personal safety. Um, and as relates to the industry, like if you're on the industry side, like you're probably fine,
Yeah.
like chances are. For the most part, like it might limit you. I mean, part of the reason I'm like out and proud and like in my first meetings, I always like bring up my wife is because I want the haters to self-select out. I mean, for the most part, they do. Like nobody hires me and then they're like, oh, it's a surprise that I'm gay. But if it's like a referral or something, they might not necessarily know. And
Yeah.
so, I think that if, yeah, like, you got to figure out your own end of things. So there might be some people you won't work with ever,
Yeah.
ever, ever, and you have to just be okay with that. And I mean, I've always said, like, sometimes you just got to be the asshole, and that's
Mhm.
okay because you can't make everybody happy. And but in this case, you're not necessarily the asshole for coming out. But then as an artist, even more complicated.
Yeah.
You have to decide it's gonna be a harder road, unfortunately. And part of that is systemic because as it's because it's a cyclical thing, right? Radio won't play you, so
Yeah.
management labels won't sign you, so booking agents won't tour you because radio won't play you. And
Yeah.
and so until we start seeing these labels picking up on like, oh no, look, like Orville Peck is killing it. Like maybe we could sign this guy or, this girl, or you know what, maybe we will put, so and so on Megan Patrick's tour. Or
Yeah.
maybe we will put like, you know, this girl on Dallas Smith's tour or something like that.
Yeah.
Like giving these queer artists until agents and labels and industry start backing more queer artists is going to be a very hard road, and you're going to have to like grassroots market the shit out of yourself
Yeah.
in the vein of Orville Peck, and kind of abandon the natural system.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
screw the system. It's 2021. Let's start fresh and, you know, bring the
well,
queerness to
seriously
country.
though, like if
Yeah.
they're not gonna play you guys, like it's harsh reality, and like trust me, I am, oh my god, I'm probably gonna shoot myself in the foot here. But no, if they're gonna ignore you, then to hell with them. Work
Yeah.
outside the system.
Yeah.
Kick ass until they cannot fucking ignore you.
Yeah.
Because
I think what's really special is that in a time like 2021, a lot of times you do not need, it's super helpful to have a label behind you, but look at everyone who just starts putting stuff out online, releasing singles, put it on Twitter, put it on your social media. And that is a tool right there. You can almost be your own label if your song strikes a chord with somebody. You know what I mean? So there's other ways for queer artists to not have to go through that system. I know it's more hard. I know it's difficult, but it can be done. So like I think people, you know, the time is coming, the tide is turning.
Yeah, with a solid like grassroots strategy, like lots can be done. And you can't just necessarily like throw it online and expect, oh, somebody's gonna stumble on it. But like if you take the investment, like let's say you're gonna spend like thousands of dollars on radio tracking, like you take that investment and you put it into social media marketing and viral, you know, and then video promotion, and then, you know, partnerships on TikTok and, you know, Spotify playlists and stuff like that, which is getting harder and harder to sort of play within. It's definitely becoming a realm of the majors, but like even so, like that's like you can get things bubbling without the mainstream help, and that like, so it can be done. So baby gays out there, artists or otherwise, like it can be done. Like it's not going to be easy. You're cis het, like don't compare yourself to the cis het world. Like they got the golden ticket and they got like all the privilege in the land to make this happen. Just know that you're probably better than them, and that's why if anybody starts getting in your way and getting nervous, and like it's probably because you're better than them and they know it.
You got something special there. You got something special. So this was super fun. I could chat with you forever. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat with me. And thank you to the CCMA for doing this. Like I said, it is so important. Representation is important. And it's important that we have these conversations within the Canadian country music scene. So thank you so much again. This was a blast.
Oh, thanks so much, Stephen. This is incredible. And yes, thank you to the CCMA for giving us this platform. I really appreciate this. As the national organization for country music, you are really like drawing your line in the sand, planting the flag for us, and it's a great step towards making country music in Canada a safer and more inclusive community. So thank you so much for this opportunity. And thank you, Stephen, for a killer interview. This was super fun.
That was super fun. You're so easy to talk to, and I appreciate you being open with me.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.